We have started recording the show.
Yay.
David's in pain.
I'm hurting.
Bad wisdom teeth.
I got to get them cut out. So you wanted to talk about top directors today.
I figured today's discussion, which we'll try to make quick because poor David is in pain, is we'll go ahead and talk about our favorite top 5 directors and then vote on who the worst director is.
Oh, I forgot about the worst director.
I already know who my choice is. But
Yeah,
we'll start with the best anyway.
Okay.
Why don't you go ahead and do one, I'll do one, and then we'll go through our little list. Starting with number 5.
I hate to say this guy's name because the more I think about him, the less I like him. But I'm going to start with Scorsese. Just because the man did both Raging Bull and Taxi Driver. And I actually believe Taxi Driver is still one of my favorite films. I really love Taxi Driver. It gets a little worse every time I see it. And Departed was fantastic. But yeah, so he would be at the absolute bottom of my list of best. I enjoy his films, but the more I think about him, the less I like him.
Wow, that's pretty intense. We'll get to that later then. Because he's on my list, but he's not in 5th. 5th place for me actually goes to J.J. Abrams. And the reason being is that, granted, Star Trek and all the other series, Fringe, you know, great movies and TV series, but the problem I have is that he seems to take on too many projects at one time, and then you start getting a deficit on the programs he's already got going. So right now, you know, I watched like the first 2 episodes of Revolution and stopped watching it because it got really dumb. So it was like, sometimes you get a great thing going, and then other times not so much. So that's my number 5.
For me, next would probably be Orson Welles, which is like, and did he direct or was he just an actor? Am I just confused? Am I in that much pain?
He directed too.
I thought, because he directed Citizen Kane, right?
Yes, he did.
And just because, I mean, it's so funny because it's so cliche to say that Citizen Kane is your favorite movie, and it's not my favorite movie, but it's just, there were so many firsts in Citizen Kane. The way the camera work was modeled, the way the story was told, the kind of roundabout, not like pseudo-linear path that they used. But the big thing for Citizen Kane, for me, that makes it a movie that's just never going to stop being old, is the final scene where he walks into the Hall of Mirrors, and his reflection is just ad infinity, just stretching into infinity. It's just this multiplicity of self, and it says so much without saying anything at all. And it's just, the man was a friggin' genius. He was so good. And even though, yes, it is cliche to say Orson Welles' favorite director, he has to be on the list. I mean, just that one scene is just so mind-blowing. I
agree with that. I wholeheartedly, Citizen Kane by far is in my top 10 favorite movies, just because of the whole way that the whole story went around, and it's just really incredible movie. So I mean, for me, that's my top 10 movies. For me, my number 4 is actually Stanley Kubrick.
I was going to put Kubrick in, but I don't know why I decided not to.
Well, I mean, you think of some of his creative genius works that he's done, and I think most people, they think of Stanley Kubrick and it's Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing.
But
for a lot of people, it's The Shining.
Well, I was going to say, he's done so many other movies, and people, you know, they hear Stanley Kubrick, they only associate him with Clockwork Orange, and it's like, well, he did The Shining too, which was a brilliant film. And he followed the entire line from Stephen King so well on the film that it was just...
I think Stephen King actually helped him with it, didn't
he? He did.
There's a book for sale online right now that has Kubrick's, like, notes. It's a copy of The Shining with his notes of what he was going to do with the script. That'd be a cool thing to have. You know, I think I'm the only person that I know, and I know we've had this conversation, I think I'm the only person I know that actually enjoyed Eyes Wide Shut. I really like that movie. It was very clever, and I like movies that pull off understatement and have a conflict that is so personal and has more to do with relationships but does it well. And that whole movie is just so weird. I can't help but love it. It's a guilty pleasure of mine by far, but it's a good movie to me.
That's true.
Oh wait, I'm next, aren't I?
You're number 3, yeah.
Okay, my number 3 is probably, I'll have to go with Akira Kurosawa. Just for Ran. Ran is just so huge, and I once had a friend who told me that if you really want to enjoy one of Akira Kurosawa's samurai movies, it's best to watch it on mute, because his camera work and his scenery is just so amazing and so beautiful. You don't even need to hear what the hell is going on in the movie. It's literally just that grandiose. But Ran is a really beautiful retelling of King Lear in the feudal Japanese, with a feudal Japanese subject. And it does it brilliantly. But also, with Kurosawa, you had Dodez Kadan, which Dodez Kadan is the story, is this weird, like, multiple narrative structure of all these people who, like, I think a lot of them are impoverished, and all these storylines just kind of come together and interweave in and out. And that's a fantastic film too. I mean, I've actually never seen Seven Samurai, and I hate myself for that. I've also never seen Throne of Blood, and that's actually Kurosawa doing Macbeth, which I bet is probably even better than Ran. But I was just so impressed with Ran that he would have to be up there. I think I've run out of stuff to say about Kurosawa.
I'm getting the name of the... there's a reason why I'm choosing this one next, and I'm trying to be dead on with this about that. I'd have to say that my third one, and this is where I'm going to finally get into the one that he was talking about, was Martin Scorsese. For me, Martin Scorsese is my third because... you know, I really enjoyed The Departed and a lot of the other films that he's done. And I think that The Departed, to me, was, you know, after his long break of, you know, he took a little bit of a break from doing some directing, and I think that was a good welcome back. And not only that, but I think it was just a really understated film. But him as a whole, in general, for his filmmaking, is pretty brilliant.
My turn?
Yeah, number two.
Number two for me, and I got a dark horse for you.
I moved the camera.
No, you know, my number two is a split between two people. I couldn't decide, so I'll just do a quick reason why it's split. It's split between Franco Zeffirelli and why am I blanking? It's the pain. I'm not this stupid. Ingmar Bergman. Franco Zeffirelli, I don't actually think is that Titanic a director, because all he ever directed really was Shakespeare. I have a real love in my heart for Shakespeare. And his Romeo and Juliet is actually probably William Shakespeare's worst play. It is a terrible play. Oh, yeah. It's gotten all this acclaim, and it doesn't really deserve it. But Franco Zeffirelli's rendition of Romeo and Juliet is absolutely fantastic.
Side note, what are your two favorite Shakespeare plays? While we're sitting here just magically talking about
probably Macbeth and Lear.
Mine would have to be Hamlet and Othello.
I know, you know, it's funny, I said Macbeth and Lear, but Hamlet is the best one he wrote. But I enjoy Lear and Macbeth the most.
Well, Lear, I think, had a more interesting story, you know, behind the whole situation, but still Hamlet and Othello were not too
And Zeffirelli directed Romeo and Juliet, and it was really good. It was just an amazing production. But then he came back later in his life and did Hamlet. And it's really terrible that it was Mel Gibson, but Mel Gibson totally rocked that part. And Zeffirelli took a huge risk by implying the incest with his mother. But that's what's going on in Hamlet. I don't care what anybody says. Shakespeare meant to put that hint in.
That was on purpose. That wasn't a...
And for that moment when, like, Mel Gibson plants that big fat wet one on his own mom, and you're just sitting there for a minute, and it just washes over you that you're just like, this is the pinnacle of human degradation and despair, and it's lovely. And just for a side note for Bergman real quick, the man directed Seventh Seal. He just doesn't get any better than Seventh Seal. Or Through a Glass Darkly. I mean, you just can't say anything about
that. That was a good film. Through the Glass Darkly was a great film.
It hurts my heart to think about how good that movie was.
Number two. It's actually ended up being a toss-up between two specific directors. And they're both current directors. So I'm going to say my number two...
We both split number two in half. That's funny.
Number two for me is Peter Jackson.
So lame.
Not because of the upcoming film, The Hobbit, or his last previous work, which was, of course, Lord of the Rings.
Shout out to Peter Jackson. Shout out to Yogscast. Mr. Frodo. Okay.
Sorry about that, folks. We ran out of battery power. Anyway, back to number 2. And just after he did his nice little quote from the Oxcast about Jaffa Cakes being gone, Mr. Frodo. No, I'm not saying he's my second favorite director because of those 2 films, or those 2 series. More specifically is his earlier work, which included Dead Alive and Meet the Fweeples. And I'm only referencing especially Meet the Fweeples solely because the genius behind turning the Muppets into a morbid, messed up, crazy house of awesomeness.
Meet the Feebles. We're not your average, ordinary people.
That's brilliant.
So that would be, because of those 2 films, that's kind of my reason why I chose Peter Jackson as my number 2.
Hell hath no fury like a hippo with a machine gun.
Wow, that's bad. You're number 1! Drum roll.
And I know this one's cliche too, but David Lynch. And I know that's really just shallow, and most people are like, really, David? But no. Seeing Mulholland Drive, I was in a graduate level film class, a film criticism class, and the whole point of the class was non-linearity. That there's stories that don't follow the linear path telling. And Mulholland Drive was the last film we watched, and I remember just being like my jaw hit the floor after seeing that movie. And I didn't like it at first because I didn't understand it. And I don't think I understand it now, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it was something more going on with that film than something you can understand. It's just getting to like a feeling or a dream. And that was when I decided to go out and rent Eraserhead. It's funny. I actually think
but okay.
I think I like Eraserhead more than Mulholland Drive. The more that I actually think about it, Mulholland Drive is just the most pleasant film viewing experience I can think of. I can watch that movie over and over and over again and never get tired of it. But Eraserhead feels like it is beating the snot out of you. It feels like you are being assaulted by that movie. And yet, when the guy's head pops off his shoulders, and there's this pool of blood on the checkered floor, and there's that tree in the background, and the worm comes up through his neck and just screams. You almost feel like you're watching the universe be created and destroyed at the same time. It is that powerful. Like, I remember just being rooted to my seat and just thinking, I'm having some type of really horrific spiritual experience. Like there is a demon reaching through my TV and punching me in the face. And I loved it, and there's something wrong with me.
Yeah, that comment alone, I think, is going to make me say something wrong with you. But at the same time, it's a good choice. What are you going to say?
God, I love David Lynch. I even like Dune. I love Dune.
Anybody who says anything bad, and I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this as evenly as possible. The movie Dune was terrible if you compare it to the actual book, because obviously Frank Herbert, when he wrote Dune, nothing like that movie. Obviously, it was entirely different. There was only a couple things that were correct. And then the rest was like, okay, let's see what we can put in this movie and make it look cool.
I love the shield belts, though. It's being attacked by polygons. It's great.
That was the best. And then the bullet slowly trying to go through, and then the blade. I was like, okay, that's... But,
you have to admit, there's no way you couldn't be attracted to Sting.
Well,
it's impossible. He's not even like male hotness. He's just hotness personified. He's kind of like Prince, you know? He's not male beauty or female beauty. He's just beauty.
It's like, and now I'm going to throw it off entirely. It's like watching David Bowie in Labyrinth.
There you go. Every time I watch Labyrinth, I get the uh-oh feeling.
Yeah, it's like, this creepy.
This is wrong. I shouldn't enjoy this much.
Good film, though. But yeah, no, Dune I think was a great addition to David Lynch. I really don't care.
I love Dune.
So I'll go ahead and move on to my number 1.
The spice must flow.
He controls the spice, controls life. So, my number 1 is Joss Whedon.
You suck.
Why?
You suck.
Why Joss Whedon?
I don't like you anymore.
Well, here's the reason why, and I'm not doing this because of Buffy or Angel, which were 2 terrible series in my view. I'm not even going to lie about that, and I'll get flamed for that too. I enjoyed Firefly.
Firefly was good.
Serenity was a perfect way to end the series. And it was a great movie that just completely closed some chapters. I do have one caveat to that, but I don't need to get into this on that one. And then, solely because of how big this movie ended up being in the box office and everywhere else, was of course the Avengers. The only reason, though, why I think the Avengers worked was because of how well Joss Whedon was able to put everything together. He even co-wrote part of the story for it. So he's credited as part of the story, and it was really good that he did that because he ended up tying in some stories for that made the movie work better. And of course, he's already been tied on for the next one. But Joss Whedon, despite David's dislike of me now, his disdain of my existence.
You just lost like 50 cool points, dude.
Joss
You were about to earn a stuffed giraffe at my bowling alley.
Got number one.
I
Now, I do want to give one runner-up to the fifth position of runner-up, which was actually Kurt Sutter. And do you know who Kurt Sutter is?
I have no idea.
Do you know the show Sons of Anarchy?
Yeah.
He's the director and writer and everything. But essentially, we were talking about Shakespeare, and this made me think of this, is part of the whole thing behind Sons of Anarchy is if you're watching it, it kind of starts going into the telling of Hamlet, minus the incestuality part of it. But we can skip that part.
My runner-up would be Justin Murray.
That's a good decision.
That was my childhood friend. We made a movie where his dog was attacking a cardboard city. And we also made a movie starring me as a martial arts hero called David Chan.
Ha!
We were wearing bathrobes, headbands, and had flea market samurai swords. It was... He had talent. He also had a movie he made in elementary school called Biker Boys from Beyond, which was a real classic.
Nice.
Yeah, so...
Well, I think we're going to get to the fun part, David. Who is your most...
I went first before. You go first this time.
Mine's the easiest decision for any gamer who's alive. Yubel is quite possibly the worst director ever.
It's funny because I remember I watched Alone in the Dark, and I remember thinking to myself, this is bad. But it's tolerably bad. I mean, it's stupid, but I don't see why it has such a horrible reputation. Then it got to that scene where the creatures break in and they're doing the firefight, and I was like, oh, this is poo. I mean, it was real poo.
I can't remember the name of the one film that he did that I actually found myself sitting through the entirety of and thinking to myself, that wasn't terrible. It was bad, but it was terrible. And I can't remember the name of the film, but the kid goes on a rampage and murders half of the town he lives in.
Is it Going Postal?
I can't remember. No, it wasn't Postal. I don't know.
I don't even know if that movie's released yet or not. I'm so out of that.
But I can't remember what it was actually called. But the film itself wasn't actually badly put together. It was okay. But the majority of his films, especially Far Cry, was terrible. And I feel bad because the main actor for Far Cry, I actually like his acting, but it was such a terrible film. So Yubel is my number one worst director.
A friend of mine went to see House of the Dead, and I wanted to see it because I had no idea who Yubel was at the time. And I remember he told me, dude, it's so bad. All you'll be able to think about, if you see it in the theater, is you're sitting in a dark room with a bunch of complete strangers staring at a screen that you would rather not be staring at. He said it is an experience in total and complete just unpleasantness.
Anguish. It's
anguish. He was like, don't do it. My most hated director is George Lucas.
I will actually agree with that, as George Lucas being on my
worst
directors. And the reason being, for me, solely is due to episode 1.
You know, alright, okay. I can understand episode 1 being the thing that upsets you. For me, episode 1 I could have forgiven episode 1. Because he was trying to get a bunch of kids interested in the series so that it could live on.
But
I can forgive
is
that.
He continued. It wasn't just the one thing that he did. It was a continuation of it.
But I can understand that. I could forgive all of episode 1 if I had to. I could have forgiven most of Attack of the Clones. Good action movie. I enjoyed it.
There's actually a lot of good action scenes in that movie.
And I could even forgive the final scream at Revenge of the Sith. Padme, Dad? No. That's exactly what he does, too. What I can't forgive in the film is the line, I don't like sand. It gets everywhere. Not like you. Your skin's so soft. Seriously, how does that dialogue get into a film and you take it seriously? Also, it hurts with what he did with the prequels because Anakin as a tragic figure, what George Lucas should have done with Anakin was make him absolutely perfect in every conceivable way. He should have been the model Jedi. He should have been a good friend to Obi-Wan. Almost completely like, you know, he'll never fall. He'll never fall. Because that's the essence of tragedy. You don't want the person to fall. You suspend your belief that they can. And then when they fall, it hurts.
And I think that's what made it difficult throughout the first three was that you could see him traveling down a path already. And you could already see what was coming already before it even happened.
I would have kept the scene where he slaughtered the Sand People. But that being said, you could have kept that scene and still struggled to make him a likable character. You could have done it. It could have happened. It could have worked that way. Hayden Christensen, terrible.
Alright, we're going to hold for 1 second. I'll be right back. 2-second break. George Lucas, terrible, huh?
I mean, and you know, I think the other disappointing thing is that somebody pointed this out to me. If you so hate the prequels, and you hate the prequels, and you just sing the absolute hatred of the prequels, if you take an honest look at yourself, and you go back and you watch the original series, and you just suspend your love and adoration that the way you saw it in your childhood, you know what you'll realize? Those movies are all really stupid.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I still love them, and I don't care. They're stupid, but, I mean, those prequels almost completely wrecked the whole franchise.
You know what ruined it for me is the whole thing after Episode 3 came out, and George Lucas said, without a shadow of a doubt, I am not doing any more Star Wars films. And then Disney hands him a pile of money.
Well, he wasn't lying. He's not doing it.
Yeah, this is true. Disney hands him a pile of money. He's like, oh yeah, this can be in Episode 7.
There is also something interesting that I support, and there's two things I support in the prequels. The idea of Taoistic balance in the universe, that the light side of the Force is the true villain, which actually does make those movies kind of watchable. You can dig a lot out of it if you consider the Jedi the villains, because they are. Two,
because they are.
Jar Jar Binks is responsible for the downfall of the galaxy. That's pretty cool. I mean, you have to admit, that's pretty cool. He actually is part of the reason that the galaxy spun into chaos. Is directly blamed on Jar Jar doing that crap with Palpatine. That's pretty suave. That's kind of cool. I like that.
That's intense.
Yeah.
So finally, I think we got one more thing I want to try doing. And that is our Netflix pick of the week. What on Netflix streaming, got to point that out, did you actually think was worth or should be worth watching?
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Alright. I recently converted to Buddhism, and there's some really good Buddhism documentaries on there, and one of them is Journey into Buddhism that takes you through Laos and Burma and Thailand to the holy sites, and has like all these different regional kind of legends and stuff, and holy locations and shrines, and it gives you a nice good look into the monastic societies and what they do, and it's a very relaxing and very thought-provoking documentary. It doesn't have a lot on like substance or content of Buddhism. If you want that, I would split it in half and say that there's one about Siddhartha, the guy who would become Buddha. That's actually the documentary that got me interested in the first place. So I would definitely look at the Buddhism documentaries. I've been divided on the ones about the Dalai Lama, but the ones just about straight Buddhism, they're good to go. They're great.
Hey, I have no complaint. My quick pick of the week is going to actually be Tin Man. If you haven't seen it, it's a 3-part miniseries, and it's basically happens. It's in the same line as The Wizard of Oz, only it's farther down the line. It's after Dorothy. by a couple generations. But it's a pretty good show. It's a 3-part miniseries. It's available in HD. Totally worth watching. Great storyline, and you won't get bored. And you'll actually find yourself watching it more than once. So that's my quick pick.
Don't watch The Stand. It's like a high school production of The Stand. It's that bad. I would rather actually watch a play put on by a bunch of high schoolers with a social anxiety disorder. Be like a Romeo and Juliet production, being like, "Oh Romeo, where for? Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God." That would be better than The Stand. That would be infinitely more entertaining.
The Stand was terrible.
Yeah,
but.
And I can make that joke because I have a social anxiety disorder. So I'm speaking as one of you.
He actually works well with me, though, amazingly. So I guess we're going to end it with our.
Oh God! Oh God! Oh God!
We're going to end this for this week, and we're going to leave the question to the viewers, which is: what's your favorite director? What movie and why? And what's your least favorite director? And why? David's already halfway out the door.
I have a headache, and I need to get out of these halogen lights before my eyes bleed.
All right, thanks for tuning in, guys, and hopefully we'll do this again.
Yeah.